Hello, in this video I will demonstrate using two different scenarios a bypass to Palo Alto Networks Content ID inspection. The Content ID is the equivalent inspection engine to Threat Prevention Inspection. In our first example, we will examine PAN's out-of-the-box configuration and its behavior. As we can see on PAN OS Admin Guide, by default, the Forward Segments Exceeding TCP Content Inspection Queue option is enabled. This means whenever the TCP or UDP content inspection queue is full, the firewall skips Content ID inspection. Throughout this video, we will use the following simple lab environment: a Windows host behind a Palo Alto gateway that is connected to the Internet, as well as a web server that we used as our files repository. Let's start by reviewing our Palo Alto gateway configuration. We use the PAN 820 appliance with the latest software and updated with the latest application and threats packages. We apply a default policy that includes IPS and anti-spam with strict profiles and default antivirus and URL inspection policy. Let's commit and install the current policy. Under the Device tab, we will find the Content ID configuration and see that by default the Forward Segment option is enabled. That means when the queue is full, the gateway forwards the traffic inside the network without inspecting it for threats. After we have configured our gateway, let's download files from a web server and test the Content ID queue behavior. We download 3 files, 2 of which are large sizes, benign files, and the third is malicious file called Finance21. We can see on the browser that the benign files were downloaded successfully and our malicious file, Finance21, was blocked. Now we will switch to the gateway to see the logs. Refresh the log page and now see a virus alert for the file. We see additional details about the log and can investigate further if we wanted. Just a quick review to our download folder on the PC shows that the Finance21 malicious file was indeed blocked and I have no access to it. At this point, I will log into a remote desktop in order to manipulate the size of the malicious file. This is the isolated VM I have. On this host, I download the same files from the same server, but this time I would like to open and edit the malicious file. My goal is to make this malicious file larger. In essence, the download of this malicious file will trigger a queue bypass on the gateway. In order to achieve this goal, I simply add multiple PICs into this file and make it larger. Please note, I only allowed enable editing without enable content, as I don't want the macro payload to be activated. When I saved the file, no damage was done to the malicious payload, and the file does still contain a malware activity. Pay attention to malicious file size. Now, Finance21 is now 34 megabytes. We simply changed the size of the original malicious file. Let's upload the files back to the web server. All files are uploaded and stored in place, including our malicious sample that now is on a larger size. At this point, we completed the modification task and uploaded the samples to the server. We can go back to the host behind the Palo Alto's gateway. We will start by deleting the logs from our previous example. We also clear our download folder, removing all files. Now, let's open a CLI for the gateway. I logged in using PuTTY, and for this scenario, I would like to closely monitor the Content ID queue. There is a show command that indicates what the queue status is. As can be observed from the description, an incremented value means active bypass. In our current state, the queue counter has a value number of 3. Let's go to download the files, which include the modified malware from the web server. This time, we also closely monitor the Content ID queue. We see that the value increments to 4. By the time all files were downloaded, the queue status is 5. This means the value was incremented and a bypass occurred. All files were downloaded successfully. Looking into my download folder shows that I have access to all files. Let's refresh the Threat Logs page. No logs, no alerts about malicious activity. I now open the malicious file, and this is a game over. By modifying the size of a malicious file and making sure the Content ID queue is full, I managed to bypass Palo Alto's threat prevention inspection. Let's move forward to the second scenario, where we will examine Palo Alto default security versus its best practice security. We will start by quickly reviewing our policy and confirm that there are no logs. We will check the queue value via the CLI command and closely monitor the queue in this example. We start this scenario while the queue monitor indicates a value of 7. Now we will log into the web server and download 3 files. During that time, we monitor the queue and see that the counter skips to 9. Again, the queue value incremental means a bypass status has occurred. All files have downloaded successfully and are available on the local host. No logs were generated, and those files downloaded smoothly to the host behind the Palo Alto gateway. At this point, let's examine Palo Alto's security best practice. According to the document, it is a best practice to disable the forward TCP content inspection queue and disable this type of bypass behavior. We will follow this instruction and turn off the content ID bypass. Let's install the adjusted we made and review that our threat policy still is the same. Similarly to our previous scenario, at this point I will delete the files prior to moving forward. No need to delete threat logs as nothing was generated in our previous download process. Now that we are all set, let's download the files from the server. We don't need to monitor the queue at this time as we disabled the Content ID bypass, which means that right now our gateway will fully inspect all traffic, no skipping. Surprisingly, right now the gateway blocks one of the files. The same exact file that was previously downloaded smoothly is now being blocked. Let's see what logs were generated. For that file, we actually see 2 logs. The file contained an ICAR, static malware, and was flagged based on 2 engines. 1. Antivirus detection. 2. IPS detection. On my download folder, I also don't have access to this file, which was blocked during the download process. This means that we can disable the forward segment inspection queue option and avoid bypass situation. However, let's examine the implications and outcomes if we disable this option. As stated out loud on the admin guide, changing the default behavior results in performance degradation, and some applications may incur loss of functionality. Palo Alto Networks customers have 2 choices: secured and not working, or working and not secured.